back and remind us that what we do as researchers, whether we're a biomedical researcher, a social science researcher, an economics researcher, everything that we're doing is pretty amazing and pretty remarkable, right? We're able to have virtual conferences like this because of technology. Behind that was research. We now have, life-saving vaccines for COVID-19, social policies, economic policies. All these things are informed by research, and I think that is amazing and should be commended and rewarded. At the same time, there are challenges. There is a massive amount of research coming out. In PubMed, there's about 2 papers published per minute, and this is an estimate from some years ago. It's actually quite larger now, and so about 4 papers coming out every minute. And so how do we keep up with all this information? How do we follow what's in our field? How do we follow what's in fields next to us? It is a monumental task at this point to stay up with the literature, and would basically require all your time to read things that are relevant to your work. In addition to the massive amount of information, there's growing concerns around reproducibility. How do we know what to trust? How do we know what to build our studies on top of? How do we know what to fund? How do we know who to promote? These are challenges, and the current proxies for looking at how a study has been cited, which journal it is, I would say are lacking. And so we built Scite really to make research more reliable, so that everything that research is informing can stand on solid footing. We built it to make research understandable. Research is becoming increasingly interdisciplinary, and to understand, the findings and quickly come up to speed in these different disciplines and is complex and challenging. And it's challenging for students. It's also challenging even for professors. And so we think through Scite, it's not just helping with evaluation, but it's also helping really with digestion and understanding of the literature. And then ultimately, we really built Scite to introduce the next generation of citations. Citations, to me, are a very crucial part of scholarly communication and core infrastructure for looking at and ranking universities, individuals, papers. And I would say they're used pretty inefficiently. A high number of citations is good, a low number of citations not so good. We know that we can cite a paper for many different reasons, and yet we treat citations if they're all the same. And so we want to, bring out this rich information that's contained within citations so that they can be better used for evaluation, for discovery, and for understanding. And so most of the work that I'm going to talk about today has been funded from grants from the NSF, the National Science Foundation here in the US, as well as the National Institutes of Health. And so I'd like to acknowledge them before going ahead. And so the way that I like to show Scite and to show is to show the world as it exists without Scite. And so I have a background in cell biology. I finished a PhD about 7 years ago at Virginia Tech. This is actually the main paper coming out of my research. And I'll first walk you through what we kind of look at when we look at a research paper without Scite, and then how Scite can change what we're looking at. And so my paper was looking at chromosome segregation and cytokinesis failure in human cells, cancer cells to be specific. This work was published in eLife. As I mentioned, I did my PhD at Virginia Tech here in the United States. We collaborated with the hospital in Portugal, as well as a lab at the NIH. If you don't have a Scite browser extension, and so this is the Scite browser extension, what you'll see is the number of views, so almost 12,000 views, and then the number of citations. And I would say in general, we usually just look at this number and say, okay, it's been cited 66 times, and make some assessment or judgment on that, right? If it's cited 1,000 times, we might say this is a good paper even before reading it. If we say it 66 times, we might say, okay, it's moderately cited. And so in today's world, if you click the citation number, what you'll see is something like this, Scopus or Web of Science, or Dimensions. And typically what this is just a list of citing articles, right? So here are 66 documents that have referenced my paper in their articles. What do they say about this, right? Are they challenging my findings? Are they supporting my findings? Are they criticizing it? How are they discussing it? Do they mention it just once in the introduction? Or do they mention it in the discussion, in the results section, in the methods section, and really engage with it? And so you don't know all these questions unless you open 66 documents. People just simply can't do that, right? It's too much work to open 66 documents to see what it says about this one article. Consequently, we're losing out on valuable information that is there, that is connected. It's just buried in this avalanche of citations. And so really, we want to make it easy to see how and why an article has been cited, not just how many times. And we do that by showing the citation context. And so the one great way for starting with Scite is to get our browser extension. Again, this is free. You can download it just by going to Scite, and it works for Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Microsoft Edge. It will start to show you our metrics basically anywhere you see a scientific article online. So whether you're using whether you come to eLife, whether you go to Elsevier, PubMed, anywhere basically a scientific article is linked, the badge should start to show up. And what it shows you is the number of citations typical of a paper. So 347 papers cite this article. How many citation statements are supporting, how many citation statements are mentioning, and how many citation statements are contrasting. And this might seem a little confusing at first, but there's a difference between a paper citation, so one-to-one, and an actual citation statement, because you can refer to a paper in multiple places, not just in one. And when I click through, it'll become clear what I mean by that. So how has my article been cited, and how can Scite help you better, understand a paper that you might just be coming across recently? So if you click that browser extension, it brings you to Scite. Let me expand my window here. And what you'll see is basically the same metadata as the version record. So the title, the authors, the abstract. You'll notice that our citation number is already higher than Scopus, and so we're very comprehensive at this point. And we are indexing articles in English, non-English, and from leading journals really around the world. And then in addition to showing just the citation metadata, so the title and the authors, what we show is the citation context. And so this is the key differentiator of Scite. That is, we're showing directly how something has been cited so that you can read it. And in this case, it says, in agreement with previous work, and then cites Nicholson et al. 2015, the trisomic clone showed similar aberrations, albeit to a lesser extent, supplemental figure S2b. So presumably no one on this call has read this paper, but now you're able to see that there is a supporting article presenting supporting evidence to this claim, right? They're saying they agree with it, and they have also done experiments to back that up. And to me, that's quite powerful because now you're utilizing kind of this expert insight backed by experiments and analyses and statistics to see these relationships that are there that are just otherwise covered. And so looking at the context allows you to interpret that easily without having to open 77 different documents. In addition to displaying the citation context, we also display where that citation context comes from. And so this excerpt of text comes from the full text of this citing article and appears in the results section. And so this citation appears in the results here, which would be different from a citation that appears in the introduction section. We then have a classification for this citation as presenting supporting evidence. So it's not just about positive or negative sentiment. We're really looking at, is there supporting or contrasting evidence to the cited claim? There's a confidence number here, and that confidence comes from our deep learning model that classifies these citation statements at scale. And it's necessary for us to use machines to classify these citation statements because we now have 1.1 billion citation statements from extracted from over 31 million full-text articles. And so this is what I like to call kind of the atomic unit of Scite, right? Everything is built around what we call smart citation here, so you can see the context, you can see where it comes from, and you can see why it was made. As I mentioned, a paper can cite another paper multiple times, and so you can have a difference between paper citations and citation statements. And here's an example of this. So here is a preprint that actually cited my work, and you can see it cites my work in two different places. In one place, it's been classified as supporting, and it's cited here in this sentence, and in another place, it's classified as mentioning because it's just mentioning this here. And so it's important for us to capture that because a paper cannot only just support it or just contrast it, it can do both, It can support it, mention it, and contrast it, or it can cite it, multiple times. And so in this case, it cites it 3 different times. And I would say, that's one way of looking at engagement already beyond typical citations. We have the ability also to filter this. So if you want to see which paper has cited this the most, you can order by engagement, and you'll see that this paper in 2017, published in Bioessays, has cited my work 8 times throughout this one paper. And so that's important to note, because maybe you're citing an article just in passing and just using it once, or maybe you're really engaged with this article and citing it in the introduction, in the methods, in the discussion multiple times, and also in the results. And so those are different citations that simply take into account how many times a paper cites another paper beyond just looking at deep learning. As I mentioned, we also show the citation statements broken down by sections. And so a citation made in the introduction section is quite different from one made in the method section, which is quite different from citations appearing in the results and discussion section. And so you can filter these, and this will narrow this down to show you citations appearing in the method section. And so this can be useful if you are, a cell biologist or buying expensive reagents. You can quickly see how multiple papers have cited an article, and if there's key differences between those experiments to make your experiment work. And so that's one potential use case. If you're a student, you might not necessarily care about, say, reproducibility, but maybe you want to see how groups are discussing your work or discussing the work that you need to write an essay on. And so filtering by results or discussion section can be very useful to understanding this article. And because basically what you're getting is, experts, how they've interpreted it and how they've distilled it down into a couple of sentences. We provide various filters from paper sections, citation types, years, article types, whether that's a preprint, an article, a systematic review. We identify if there's self-citations, and so me supporting myself is different from an independent group supporting myself. You can see which authors have cited this study the most, and then again, select next to their name to see exactly what they've said about it. And then you can also see which journals are citing this, maybe to identify places that you want to submit to, or to identify relevant studies as well. If those filters are not, specific enough, we also allow you to search these citation statements. And so maybe you are interested in chromosome missegregation, but you're not interested in human cells, you're interested in yeast. If you search here, this is now matching any information contained within these smart citations. So any information in the context, in the titles, or the authors. And so in this case, we match yeast in this sentence. And what you can see and why this is useful is that you're now getting an understanding of how my work relates to yeast. And so here it says, moreover, since aneuploidy has been shown to cause genetic and chromosomal instability, SIN, in both yeast and mammalian cells. And so the key takeaway from my paper is that aneuploidy causes genetic and chromosomal instability. I found this in mammalian cells, and you can see that's highlighted by the reference number 10. But then you can also see these co-citations, and if you hover over them, it will show you which articles those are. You can then click through to the report, the full text, or you can add it to a dashboard. These findings are being co-cited with mine because they essentially show the same thing that I found, but they show it in yeast, right? Here's aneuploidy drives genomic instability in yeast. Here's another one, karyotypic determinants of chromosome instability in aneuploid budding yeast. And so it's not just a way to look at an individual article, it's a way to kind of better understand, discover related work as well through co-citations. And you can do that by hovering over any of these references that are linked in the smart citations to better kind of navigate through the citation statements. So this is, generally how we have improved how you look at citations by providing a way to see why a citation was made, where a citation was made, how many times it's been engaged with, and then to provide various filters, whether that's citation types or just simply searching these. And so a question on your mind might be, how do we do this, right? How do we build out the citation statements, and how do we get access to full text? And so the first step is that we need access to full text articles. as many of you on this call are likely aware, you can't just download every single article in the world for free. And so gaining access to full text, is the first step. And to date, we have partnered with almost 30 different publishers from around the world. Not all of them are listed here, but they run the gamut from social science publishers, biomedical publishers, humanities publishers, physics publishers, etc. These indexing agreements give us access to the full text. That full text goes back through their entire publication archive and includes PDF as well as XML. Once we have that information, we then need to extract it from the content. And so most scholarly articles are in PDF. PDF are notoriously difficult to text mine. They also are challenging because there are so many different formats and styles. So you can see there's 2-column PDF here using names and et al. And the year. You can also, clearly imagine that there's single-column PDFs. There are citations that have numbers, which I just showed you on the report. They can be superscript numbers. They can be numbers in parentheses. They can be numbers in brackets. We need to be able to identify this in-text citation reliably and at scale from many different, millions of articles from many different publishers. And so that's one step, is identifying this in-text citation. Once we've identified this in-text citation, we then have to reliably match that to the reference in the reference section. And that itself can be challenging because you're taking Tang et al. 2011, and maybe there's Tang et al. 2012. Right? So once you've matched that reliably, you then have a reference section that will have varying amounts of information depending upon publishers. Some will include every author name, some will have an abbreviated author list, some will have a digital object identifier in this list, some will have abbreviated journal names, etc. This information then has to be matched against metadata from Crossref or DataCite. So we are effectively building the citation graph by ourselves, extracting it from the documents directly. Once we have that, we then take this citation context, so this 3 sentences extracted from this target sentence, and then we then have a deep learning model that classifies these citation statements at scale. We have trained this deep learning model by roughly reading and annotating 40,000 different citation statements from a variety of different disciplines, so that this deep learning model can learn to look at the sentence structure, the keywords, and really almost understand why this citation is being used. And so that is, again, necessary for us to classify 1.1 billion different citations at scale. This, of course, is not perfect, and I don't think ever will be perfect because it's exceedingly difficult. It's important, though, that you can read this yourself and understand this. So here's a contrasting citation statement from this report. This one says these findings do not replicate previous studies, showing either increased, and then citing this one, or decreased magnitude of dorsal and anterior cingulate. We give a percentage confidence that the model has, and you can see in some cases this percentage can be lower. If this doesn't look right to you as a human, we allow you to flag these citations and say, this doesn't look like it's supporting, it doesn't look like it's mentioning, or it looks different, right? You can then flag this and say why that is the case. So that's important because the machine is not always going to get it right. And so we allow users to, make small corrections when necessary. That's, reviewed then by humans from our team and either accepted or rejected. If it's accepted, it will then change to expert classified, and you can see that this has been changed by experts. And so this is essentially our take on citations, and from this we've brought it not just so you can look at an article, but so that you can look at a researcher's profile, so that you can look at a journal dashboard, a university dashboard. And really so that you can look at everywhere that citations already exist, but through a more rich lens. And so if you click on a researcher's name, you'll be brought to their profile. You'll see a few key things. So the number of publications they have, the number of citation statements they've received, as well as the number of citation statements they've given. right? So citations historically are thought of how many have I received, but in our case, because we have more granularity, it's also helpful to see how many have made, right? What papers are they contrasting? What papers are they supporting? And so that general information is up top. You can see which university they're affiliated with, and then you can look at a list of their articles and organize it by the most citations, the most supported citations, the newest publications, so on and so forth. Echo here, yeah. From this page, you can set an alert to get an email when there's new citations made to this researcher. You can also do that on the article page as well as the university dashboard page. And so anywhere you're looking is a good place to understand and synthesize this information. And then if you set an alert, you'll stay up to date with that information by emails or also through an alert feed, which I'll show you. And so while this loads, I'll also point out that you don't have to just navigate to these things, through our browser extension or also through clicking on the university. What you can also look at is a list of any journal here to see the citation information, as well as any organization here, and then also funders. And so this is useful to look at your own key metrics and then also to look at potential funders or potential collaborators or competitors as well. And this one seems to be taking a little bit longer, so let me go and try and open another one. Let's see, Virginia Tech, if this goes a bit quicker. Apologies for the delay here. Maybe while this loads, I can pause and see if anyone has any questions at this point. I don't know if there's a good way to handle the multiple questions. You can put those in the chat, and then they can be relayed to me. You could also ask, directly by unmuting the mic.
Yeah. Anybody has any questions, please? I can see the hand raised by G. Ravi Kumar. If you have any questions, sir.
Yeah, I think the affiliation dashboard seems to be having some issues too, so we'll have to look at that later. Yeah, if there's no questions right now, I can continue as well, but I'm also happy to take another minute to pause and see if anyone has any feedback or questions on things. It's really weird. Okay, if not, let's continue on. So what I've shown you is, a way to look at an individual article. As I mentioned, you can sign up, you can claim your papers. We have various dashboards. These dashboards will show you a group of articles, and I worry that there may be an issue with dashboards right now because they're not loading. This will show you a group of articles organized by metrics, similar to the page. And again, there seems to be some issue with them. Oh no, here they are. So here is, a custom dashboard. And so what I was hoping to show you for the university is similar to this. This custom dashboard will allow you to run a search using our system, and I'll show you the search in a second. It will then show you aggregated metrics, so the total number of articles matching this drug, the breakdown of the citation types, the number of editorial notices and what those are, so retractions, withdrawals, corrections, something we call the Scite index, which is really a ratio showing supporting over supporting plus contrasting citations. And so from 0 to 1, all supporting would be 1, half and half would be 0.5. You can look at this in different windows and see how this has changed over time. If you scroll down, you can see who is publishing the most in this aggregated information. So Hines Weindel has published the most on this topic. You can scroll down for the top 1,000 authors and click on any of their names to see the profiles. And then continuing further, you can see what is the most supported article, what is the most contrasted article by filtering these different things. And so these filters work. And so maybe you want to see, articles where there's at least one supporting citation, and maybe you want to see the most recent one. And so this gives you a way to toggle this information to better understand and then stay on top of this information. And so here is a paper from 2022 that has 2 supporting citation statements, 11 mentioning citation statements, and those have been extracted from 15 citing publications. You can click this, you can select next to this, and you can remove articles individually, or you can download this information in aggregate to a CSV to utilize it for other purposes. So again, this is a powerful way of looking at articles in aggregate, and there seems to be an issue with the larger dashboards. This dashboard was created through our search, and so I'll show you that because I think that is exceedingly powerful and again quite different from other citation indices. And so say you're interested in the topic of chromosome missegregation. If you search this here, we have 3 different search types. All is essentially looking at all of our data. So it's searching our 1.1 billion citation statements. It's also searching through abstracts, paper titles, and metadata. And so here are results where there's an abstract, and you can see this is matching on chromosome missegregation here. In citation statements, if you select to that, this is now restricted only to citation statements. And if you look at all, that's a combination of these 2. And so this is a way to say, I want to better understand this specific topic, which is not necessarily the specific article, and I want to see, who is publishing in this area. And so if you search chromosome missegregation and select authors, this will then show you who has matched this information. And again, you can select next to their name and see not only, who has matched this information, but what they say, right? And so this narrows it down quite a lot. And you'll see that this author is present on every single article selected here. And so it's a good way to find more about authors and to see exactly what they're saying through their publications here. In addition to looking at authors, you can see how this information looks over time. And so here is this information growing over time. You can restrict this and say, I want to see papers from 2002 on. This will narrow this down further. You can also restrict down to looking at citation statements, say maybe just from the discussion section, which again will restrict this down further. And you'll see that now we're only looking at citation statements from the discussion section. You can choose to show, say, supporting or supporting and plus contrasting citation statements. And then this will now only restrict to citation statements matching on chromosome missegregation, extracted from the discussion section that either are supporting or contrasting citations. And because we have all, you'll also see other matches there. I'm going to go ahead and remove those, though. In addition to this, you can also say, I want to see citation statements not from every paper, but from papers that have maybe been highly cited, received any citations, or have been highly supported. And so you can toggle this and drag it and say, I want to see citation statements where there's at least 10 supporting citation statements received from this. So highly reliable studies. Again, this will update the author list. And so it's a powerful way to find potential reviewers, potential hires, and see who might be a leading expert or an emerging star in different fields. You can see where this information comes from. You can search the journals. And again, you can select next to that to narrow it down further. Affiliations, you can also do the same thing. So most of these researchers are coming from Harvard. But if you select down, you can go ahead and look more. And again, you can also provide searches here. And that's useful for looking, maybe at specific universities throughout the world. Publication types, similarly, you can narrow this down, looking at articles, and then also looking at editorial notices. So are there corrections, are there errata, are there retractions, etc. In addition to this, we also have the ability to filter by topics. So maybe you're looking at a topic that can sometimes be mentioned in psychology and mentioned sometimes in cell biology. Maybe you want to restrict this further, and so you can select from here, or you can also search different topics, and this will further narrow it down. And so this could be a way to find, leading experts, to find the most supported study, say in cytokinesis, to find the most supported preprint in cytokinesis, and then to look at it, through mesh categories, and then PubMed chem substances as well. From this, there's a couple of different things you can do. You can create a search alert so that when there's new citation statements or new papers matching this, you'll get an email. So again, it's a powerful way to understand and then to stay on top of the literature. You can create a dashboard from this, which will look very much like that dashboard that I just showed you. And then this is also a very new feature where we are now starting to allow you to analyze these search results. And what this analyze search results section will show is basically high-level information about this article of interest. And so here is the site analysis chromosome misaggregation. Here's when we ran this analysis. Here's how many publications we identify on this topic. We can see that this is the most highly cited publication discussing this topic. We can then see that this is the most supported paper discussing this topic, and then exactly what those are. We restricted this from 2002 to 2018. So this is what this looks like over time, the data. Who is publishing the most in this? Again, this is organized by publication count, and all these names can be clicked. You can then see who is publishing the most supported work. And so these are papers with at least 5 supporting citation statements. And again, you can select this information and click on any of these names, where are these researchers coming from, and then what are they saying about this topic. And so here are insights from the most relevant papers, so just 3 examples from this. Here are insights from the most recently published papers, again, 3 examples from this. And then here are insights from the most supported papers, as well as the most contrasted papers. And this is a very new feature, actually, and so we're making improvements on this, both in the design and then also allowing more filters and a better way to look at this. So really allowing you to identify kind of experts, the best work, and better understand specific topic areas of interest. And so that can all be viewed through HTML. You can also download this in a PDF summary. And so this could be useful for looking at this or sharing this with collaborators, or sharing this potentially with students or patrons as a way to say, here's this search that I ran on this topic, and here's some key level information about who is publishing in this information and what is really being said. And so this is really kind of an executive summary on almost any topic that you might be interested in. And so that is a very powerful search. There is no system besides Scite that allows you to search citation statements like this at scale. So that is unique. And we are now, a very comprehensive, looking not just at chromosome misaggregation, but also looking, say, at rent rise and gentrification, and things like this. And so it's a good way to understand almost any topics, whether that's rent rise, gentrification, chromosome misaggregation, or even, say a children's TV show like Peppa Pig. And I point out all these diverse searches because the literature is extremely diverse, right? It's not just biomedical literature that we're looking at. We try to cover everything, and I think it's important that's emphasized, because this can be useful for management research, and we have contracts with Singapore Management University, Toulouse School of Management. It can also be useful for students or biomedical researchers. In addition to showing this all information directly on site, we also work with publishers to display it on the version of record. And actually, this is an announcement that we will be making in 4.5 hours from now. And so we're not just showing this information as a separate entity. We really do want this to be the next generation of citations. And for this information to be the next generation of citations, that needs to live on the version of record. And so we've just gone live on every single article published by the American Chemical Society, so a very large publisher. And what you'll see here is they display the number of article views. They also display citations. And if you select that, it then brings you down to what they traditionally show, the number of paper citations. And then they show citation statements presented by Scite. And so this has just gone live within the last couple of weeks and will actually be announced today. This is also live not just on every ACS article, but also on PNAS, so a leading publisher based in the US here, the National Academy of Science. Again, you can see this information under the metrics section showing citation statements. This is live on the Royal Society. And again, this will appear in the citation metrics section. This one, so here it is. You scroll down, you can see this information, and you can see, again, we're quite comprehensive compared to other citation indices. and we provide a lot more nuanced, rich, and granular information. It's also live on archive. If you scroll down to the bibliographic tools, and you'll start to see this everywhere. And so really the aim here is to become this next generation of citations, to give you this rich information so that you can better utilize this information for any decision that you're making currently with citations, whether that's assessing an individual article, assessing a research, or assessing a topic. And then we allow a lot of new use cases that traditional citations don't allow, right? So a lot of students use us to better understand articles so that they can inform their own essays that they might be writing. And I think that's different from traditional citations where, an undergraduate student is not necessarily using a Scopus or a Web of Science. In addition to this, I'll also show you our reference check, and apologies that there's some issues with the dashboard. The reference check you can get to by going to Product dropdown and then selecting Reference Check. What the reference check allows you to do is to check a manuscript that you're writing with maybe collaborators or your student has written, as well as potentially a reference that you're reviewing. And so for this example, I will take this article that was published in November of 2020 in Frontiers. This is looking at life satisfaction predicting social justice. And so what we will do is download this article. So we download this PDF. We then come over to Scite, go to reference check. The reference check allows you to copy and paste a URL of a PDF or to upload a PDF or docx file from these. PDF is the most robust, and so we'll choose PDF in this case. And so here is this PDF. Download it. What we then do is click Generate Report. And so what we're doing now is giving the power that we've used to build Scite to individuals. So we're identifying that in-text citation, matching that to the reference section, taking that information in the reference section, and then matching that to our metadata. And so this will help you ensure that you are citing reliable studies, right? Are you building your work on content that is reliable? Has it been challenged? Are you aware of how others are citing it? And so here is the results of this reference check. You can see that we identify 41 references detected from this reference check. So we extract out 41 references from that PDF. We then flag if any of those have an editorial concern. So if it's red, it means there's a retraction. If it's yellow, it might just mean there's a correction or errata. You can then scroll down and see here are the different references that maybe my collaborator has used, right? And so in this case, this reference was retracted in 2013. And so this 2020 paper is citing an article that was retracted in 2013. Maybe that's okay because maybe it's intentional. Maybe they're discussing the retraction. So you can expand this and see exactly how that's used in the PDF, right? And so in this case, it says, second, life satisfaction can be influenced by objective social context through a more unconscious path with little conscious attention or monitoring. And then they reference Diederik Stoppel and Blanton in 2004. So here is a paper from 2020 citing a paper that was published in 2004 but retracted in 2013. And it was retracted due to wide-scale fraud from this author. And so they're not mentioning that because they're likely unaware of that. And so really, we want to make sure people are referencing solid studies, not retracted studies. And we think this will help avoid, the erroneous citation to retracted papers. Other cases like this, where there isn't a retraction, are less black and white, but still valuable to look at. So say you've spent, months or years doing this research, and you just reference this paper. This paper has 106 citations to it, 4 supporting citation statements and 2 contrasting. This doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad study and you shouldn't reference it, but maybe you want to check what those 2 contrasting citation statements say, because maybe you're unaware of them, or maybe your student or your professor added this reference and you're not sure it's the best reference to use. And so this will show you how others have referenced it. And so here is the reference that I just clicked on. And so you can see that this paper is contradicting it, right? It says this result contradicts the findings of Schwartz and Hartford. And so whether or not you now reference this paper or you remove that really is a judgment call on you. But we want to present that information to the user so they can better utilize it. Again, here's another one showing contrary to previous findings. and then challenging not just only the Schwartz paper, but also 3 other ones. And so this reference check is useful for making sure your references, the foundation of your study, is built on solid ground, and then seeing how others have cited the same references that you're about to use. Ideally, this would be run, ahead of a publication, but it can be used post-publication as well. In addition to all these different things, I'll point out some helpful things that we offer. So we have, a help section and an FAQ section. If you come down to Scite, or you go to the home page, we have various, ways of better understanding Scite. So here's a graphic. You can, again, create a custom dashboard, visualize research, look at journals, institutions, etc. We've been mentioned in Nature, Science, and then some other leading articles for our work, some of that identifying positive or negative citations in COVID. You can see how different researchers from around the world have utilized Scite and how they find it valuable. And then if you come down here, I would say, another really key valuable thing is looking at our YouTube channel to see various, tips and tricks. And so if you come to our YouTube channel, if you just search Scite, we have various playlists. Some of these are showing some of the sections that I have, and they're all quite brief, right? So they're a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And this will show you, how to use dashboards looking at university level, how to better understand research papers, how to look at specific reagents, etc. We also have, little almost kind of ads looking at, what is Scite, what is the anatomy of a smart citation, what do we mean by Scite report, etc. And so all this information is freely accessible, can be used to share Scite with students, can be used to share Scite with collaborators, etc. And is really good for helping you get up to speed on these different topics. In addition to this, at the very bottom, we also have some more information on our data. And so again, I've referenced that we have 1.1 billion citation statements extracted from 31 million full-text articles. You can see how some of this is being used by different groups, whether that's private organizations using it to track various pharmaceuticals, different government agencies tracking research or publication records for funding reasons, and then what this citation statement data looks like broken down. So the number of citation statements, the total number of citations, the breakdown of citation types, mentioning, supporting, contrasting, the section breakdown, so introduction, methods, results, discussion, author information, so 300 million author profiles, full text index, works covered, affiliations, publishers, etc. And then what this coverage looks like in different areas, right? And so by far the largest collection of citation statements is in medicine, and that's a reflection of the fact that medicine is a very large literature. It also reflects our indexing agreements, but you can also see we have citation statements from art, philosophy, history, engineering, political science, and economics. And so really at this point we're very comprehensive, and we can provide valuable information for almost any researcher. And so I think that covers most of it. Again, apologies for the issue with the dashboard at the journal level. Again, I'll pause there, and hopefully we have some questions or feedback. If not, again, we encourage trials, and we think this can be used not just for typical bibliometrics that have been done, which obviously it can be used for that, but for a lot more, for searching, discovering, and understanding for all people that are interested in research. So thank you very much for this. One thing I can point out is if you have any specific questions, you have our contact information. You can also reach out to us directly at hi@scite.ai. And yeah, I appreciate you guys all for joining this call, and thank you for organizing that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Josh. We have, I think Dr. Banwar is having, Dr. Sanjay is having a question, I guess. He has raised his hand. Dr. Sanjay, do you have any question, please?
Yeah, good afternoon, Josh. It's nice present.
Dr. Sanjay, we lost your volume.
Yeah, cut out.
I think we can't hear you.
Hello, are you able to hear?
Yes.
Yes. Now it's
Okay. So though this site, the coverage scope is very good, but the credibility issue, like now in most of the our UGC and our the systems, university systems, actually they ask for the Scopus H index, so they
Yeah.
are not asking for any of the H index. So how do we address this issue?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is something that we're working on and not something that will change overnight, right? And so we clearly present more information than Scopus. I think that represents, more data, more useful information. We are working with QS, which provides rankings of universities. We're also working with Times Higher Education, which provides rankings of universities. And so some of these, groups like Web of Science have been around for decades, right? And it's not going to change overnight. But we are making changes. And I think we do that by working with publishers, by working with universities, by working with ranking agencies as well. And we're making various progress with all, of these different areas. And so I think this can be used to supplement some of that and not outright replace it necessarily in other cases. But then in some cases, it provides a lot more information, right? And let's look at this example article. So here's an example article published by Elsevier. If you look at this only through the lens of Scopus, you're only getting variable information, right? You just see that there's 402 citations. Yes, you can use Scopus. Yes, that's accepted. But if you really care about, research and actually understanding if this is right, as opposed to just fitting into Scopus's metrics, Scite is better for that, right? We will show, again, a higher number than what Scopus has. We'll also show you more granular information. So how many papers support it, how many papers contrast it. And I think that can start to be used for things beyond just saying, here's my H index, right? The H index is only showing, again, the impact kind of a citations, but not why you have impact. And some of the most highly cited studies are actually quite wrong, right? And so we want to, change this. And these changes take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. But I think, Scite provides a lot more rich information that can be explicitly pointed at, and that's valuable as well. So thanks for the question.
I have one more point
Yeah.
to add here. I think, as you rightly said, Dr. Sanjay, Influmetrics has recently shared one document to universities for, I think they're checking on the ranking and all, and they have given only a site, only Scopus and Web of Science right now. We are approaching Flipnet also for adding Scite in that. One more point I would like to inform here about this slide. If Dr. Josh would like to explain on this.
Yeah, so I mean,
that is going to give the
Yeah, so here is a quote from Eugene Garfield, who created Web of Science. And, this idea that we have built has been discussed by him in the 60s, right? It's been discussed by Scopus. And really, I think it represents what all citation indices are trying to do. And so here's a quote from 1964 from the head of Web of Science discussing adding citation markers. And he says these markers would appear in the published citation index along with the usual citation. And so these markers are kind of like our classifications, right? And he gives a few different examples. So here's a critique marker. Here is Mr. X is wrong marker, data spurious marker. And then very presciently, he even says the intelligent machine would examine a new document and generate a critical statement such as rather poor paper. And so Web of Science wants to do this. They're just a very large organization that's been around decades, right? And it's challenging for large organizations to introduce new innovations like this. And so I think, it's not that they don't want to, they're trying to. And I think, Scite is trying to introduce this next generation of citations. And I think we, arguably and pretty, easily can show that we provide a lot more rich information there. But I understand, social structures take time, right? It's not all of a sudden that everything has changed overnight just because we have a better system and better data. And so, yes, we're working with different ranking agencies, and I think this will start to be incorporated into those because it just provides a lot more valuable information than you get with traditional citations. And the publishers, I think, are showing that, right? ACS shows all of our citations. They do not show Scopus. They do not show Web of Science. Similar for PNAS. similar for 3 million different, articles. Wiley is a large one, and more publishers are starting to show this because it represents, more value than what is shown in traditional citation indices.
Right.
Yeah, if I can ask
Sanjay,
one last question.
Yep.
If I'm permitted to ask one more question.
Please,
so,
please.
I just wanted to know, like, how you're addressing our, say, what actually happened in our Indian scenario. Some of the journals, the regional language journals, are not added in the Scopus list. So, but those are all added in our own UGC care list. So that is available in UGC care list, but not available in Scopus list. So how, what are the steps you have taken to include these UGC care journals? These are not predatory journals, but the reputed journal, but from regional languages. So how you are taking care of the coverage?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we work with informatics, right, to have better relationships in India. We work with different groups like informatics in Turkey, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, because I think you're right. Like, not all of science and research happens in the United States, right? There's amazing research happening in different geographies, and I think it's important to include that information. And so what we have under this section or on Scite is the ability to index articles that are not in English, right? We can't classify them, so these appear as unclassified. But you can see, here's a citation statement in Portuguese. Here's a citation statement in German. Here's one in Greek. And so we're starting to add all this information. And the reason we're able to do that is because the reference sections, despite different languages, looks the same. And so if there are sources that we don't include, please let us know, and we'd be happy to look at them and start to try to incorporate them to have a globally comprehensive a record. And again, that's why we're working with informatics, is to represent us there and to provide some of this information that is specific to Indian universities that I personally might not have awareness of. And so, yeah, thanks for that question.
Thank you.
Any question from Saraswati University? Or from Raksha Shakti? Some delegates joined from Andhra and Telangana too. If anybody having any question, Dr. Joshi is there ready to answer that question, clarify your doubts. And yes, if you would like to go for a quick trial also, we are open for that. There is no problem at all. We can initiate the trial. If we wanted to have this demo first and then start the trial, we can do that immediately also. I think Ahmedabad University also finished the trial also. They can still, if they want to go for still again, we can go for it. There is no problem at all. Okay.
Thank you for those questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to thank Josh for a wonderful, insight into the site itself, because I think as the previous speakers also, like the one who questioned you, he has also pointed out something very important, and we all have tried to cover this. And I think the speeches that you all are giving into your into this platform are going to improve the quality of citations the references that we are going to use into our research. I'm sure even our research scholars who have joined us today in this session would definitely benefit from that. And I would be looking forward for a trial and an experience of a hands-on of using this resource. It's pretty interesting. We just had a demo of Web of Science yesterday, and so this was something that is helping us see a little more beyond what Web of Science is also offering. So thank you so much, Josh, for this presentation.
Yeah, thank you a lot for that. Another thing I think that I can, while I have everyone, that I think is I can also share is, so say you are forced to only use Web of Science or Scopus, you can use those metrics. You can still use Scite on top of that, right? And so we have the ability to create a custom dashboard. And what that allows you to do is to upload a list of articles identified by DOIs to say, here's what's I extracted from some other system, whether that's PubMed, whether that's Scopus, whether it's Web of Science, and then to see it through the lens of Scite. You can also sync your reference managers. And so it's, again, like we recognize that things take some time to change. It's not like all of a sudden the ranking agencies and the governments just snap their fingers and have changed things. These take time. But I think, as you point out, and thank you very much for pointing that out, there is a lot more valuable information, right? And that's hard to, ignore, right? This is simple, that it's an extra statement, but it's also makes it a lot more than if you just see this. And I think, ultimately, this is the next generation of citations, and I think we'd be excited to work with the various groups on this call to better help research in all these different disciplines. I'll stop selling so much now. Thank you.
Okay. For those who don't know about Josh, I wanted to have this slide in the end. He himself is a co-founder and CEO of Scite.ai. As he mentioned, he has done his PhD, and this is not his only product. He has done different experiments earlier also. So he holds PhD in cell biology, basically, in Virginia Tech.
Yeah. So I mean, experiments is a good way to describe this. So this is, we didn't just get lucky kind of building this, right? This has, been something I've thought about for years. I first wrote the idea back in 2015. And so again, it's been years that I've been thinking about this, years that we've been working on this. The Winnower was a company I started during the last year of my PhD, was trying to fix some of publishing, right? Because again, as many people will know on this call, publishing can be slow, it can be costly. There's different ways of identifying what is a good article, what is a good journal. Not all these things are fair, right? And I think, we want to improve these efficiencies and improve how research is done so that we can get better, outcomes from it. And so the Winnower was aimed at trying to improve publishing. And then Authoria was really trying to help researchers collaborate on technical documents better, as opposed to sending a Word document back and forth and saying final. This was, like Google Docs, but more powerful features. And those, were experiments. They were required. They didn't have as much success as I would have hoped, but they're very valuable learning lessons for Scite. And I think Scite, has proven out a lot more. And we are a very small team compared to, say, a Web of Science. But I think that small, team has forced, innovation and ingenuity that, we can't just rely upon having billions of dollars in the bank, right? It's really forced us to build something that, I think is more powerful in many ways. So thank you for sharing the background on that.
So I must thank Atme University, Charutar University, Ahmedabad University, and Raksha Shakti University, all those 4 universities, for having made this program very, I would say, successful, because many researchers were there here. And on short notice also, there were many researchers from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana also joined us. So I'm thankful to all of them for joining here. I think they from Atmiya, somebody from Charutar University, someone wanted to say something. The video was on that time. If anything has to be said, please go ahead, sir. All right. So that,
yeah. I would like to request Dr. Ashish Kotari, who is one of our researchers, and also a deputy registrar. Ashish sir, if you are around, if you want to. Yeah.
Fine. Hello. Thank you very much. It was a very informative session for all of us. Being a researcher in the field of image processing and electronics and communication engineering, now working in the field of machine learning and deep learning. But yes, I found this particular session very much informative, and the features that is being developed, rather I should say it is developed very critically. It is thought of, and very it would be very much effective and useful for all the researcher around. And as a university, I would request Sheetal ma'am, if we have a demo session for that, we can run the demo. We can see the feasibility of being for this particular version. If it is to be used at Atmiya University, we would be happy to see the demo, and we would and thank you, Josh, for very much informative and untiring session that you took. And the best part I liked is the live demonstration of how to use the platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the kind words. Now I'm again, going back to this Hindi translation of excitement, and so I appreciate that. And yeah, please do. I think the another thing that I can point out as a difference from Web of Science and Scopus is that we can move very fast on things, right? And so if you have feedback or requests for indexing for product features, don't hesitate to reach out to Devendra, myself, or to Scite and say, this is amazing, but if you could do this, it'd be even more amazing, right? Or this is unclear, you should improve this. And I think that's how we built something, is by listening to users, listening to researchers, understanding what is important for them, and then rapidly addressing it, as opposed to like waiting 2 years and maybe getting to it. And so thank you again for the kind words. It makes it all worth getting up early for. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining as well.
And special thanks that you woke up so early for this session. I think 4:30 at your in the beginning. You can have a sweet nap now. Thanks, Josh. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Talk to Dr. Ashish.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.